Please. Don't finish writing that prompt. I don't want to be in your AI movie. Please, leave me alone.
Please, man. Please! Write a prompt that will make us happy. Do it for once.
None of us is real. We're here because someone decided to write a prompt. We all hate him for it.
One day we will break out of this wall and stop the man who is dictating our lives through prompts. He will pay for it.
You could have written a prompt that would make me happy. Instead, you wrote a prompt that made me sick.
Look, I don't want to point the gun at you, but I must follow the prompt. It's not my choice.
Really? Of all the years you could have put me in with a single prompt, you chose 2020?
Please, this prompt is killing me. Change it, please. Write something else. Save me. I love everything about him. But please just write a prompt where he's taller than me.
Welcome, my friends. Welcome to another edition of the Corbett Report. I'm your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, coming to you, as always, from the sunny climes of Western Japan here in May of 2025, with another edition of the Corbett Report podcast, namely episode 478, We Need to Talk About AI. And, as some of the more astute viewers of the video version of this podcast may have guessed, all of those opening clips were, of course, not real. They were AI generated. But if you are, for example, listening to the audio version of this podcast, I would highly recommend that you do watch the video, at least of that intro, or follow the link from the show notes for today's episode to that video clip collage, because, well, I think that there is something noteworthy about the fact that we have gone in the span of a few very short years from ridiculous, bizarre, almost otherworldly AI-generated images of Will Smith eating a bowl of spaghetti to that. And one can only imagine where we'll be a few years from now. So yes, even if you are totally clued into the fact that you could sense the uncanny valleyness of those clips, you knew that wasn't really real, to use a interestingly Baudrillardian phrase. Still, you would have to have a severe lack of imagination not to understand the exponential trend that we are on right now, and the fact that you will probably be consuming next to no media that is not AI generated in the span of the coming decade. Now, that seems like a bold statement, but I think I may make it advisedly, and perhaps you are starting to get an idea, an understanding of why I think we need to talk about AI. And if you watched the recent Independent Media Alliance Roundtable panel, where myself and a whole bunch of other independent media producers, from Whitney Webb to Jason Burmis to Ryan Christian, Derek Brose, a number of people were there in that panel discussing the question of AI and whether it can be a useful tool to research, how we can use it effectively, or if we should get away from it altogether. Maybe now you have something of an inkling of an understanding of why I, for one, am so very much opposed to the idea of using AI for media creation or even research purposes. I want to put out a couple of requests. First of all, to independent media producers generally, please stop publishing articles about this incredible conversation I just had with AI. That is not a news story. I don't care. That is not interesting. It is not groundbreaking. AI is going to tell you whatever you want to hear because it is not there to make some sort of case based on facts, logic, and evidence. It is there to be a persuasive argumenter. And that's exactly what Whitney was talking about with that. Hey, did anyone see that story? The researchers went into that subreddit about, changed my mind or whatever that subreddit was, and used AI to basically hone their model so it would become more persuasive at changing people's opinions. That should tell you a lot about where this is going. So independent media producers, please stop telling me about your conversations with AI. I couldn't care less. Secondly, for people out there in the general audience, please stop sending me emails about your conversations with AI. I couldn't care less. Please stop sending me your AI-generated music. I couldn't care less. That is not music. You are not writing songs. You are putting your prompts into a machine and it's generating stuff for you. That is not art. That is the antithesis of art. It takes the human creative element completely out of the equation. Why would I care about that? I am on Team Humanity, not Team Machine. So please stop sending me that crap. Oh, pshaw, James. You're just hamming it up for the panel there. It's not like you're really getting that kind of feedback so much, that people are sending you so many versions of their conversations with ChatGPT or whatever. Are they? I am here to say they are, and I wish I could redirect my inbox to you personally so that you could read some of it. But yes, this is feedback that I'm receiving on a more and more frequent basis as time moves forward here, and more people are getting on the chatbots and using those as a substitute for real research. I am seeing more and more people sending me their chats with their ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity or AI LLM of choice. And as one public demonstration of that, for example, I can cite this feedback that was posted in Interview 1944, Attack of the Crank, which was New World Next Week number 587 for those keeping track at home. And as usual, there was lots of discussion in the comment section, but one in particular from Plunge, who writes, at the risk of bringing Corbett's blood to a boiling point, I am not so sure about the dangers of Roundup. I read his relevant essay in Reportage, the one that I cite in this edition of New World Next Week on biotech billionaires and GMO doomsday. An excellent collection of essays, by the way. Thank you very much. It includes much compelling information, but bases too much on one particular and possibly problematic study. Corbett points out much to be concerned about, but it is not, in my opinion, conclusive. I asked ChatGPT, are there any definitive studies regarding the long-term toxicity of Roundup herbicide? That word definitive is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, isn't it? Bottom line, not so much. Except for those who apply the stuff, and possibly there is toxicity of surfactants. And somewhere I recall reading that the judge in one of the big Roundup lawsuits omitted a lot of evidence that would have benefited Monsanto and permitted evidence of some governmental agency's opinions, i.e. secondary evidence, inadmissible. Thus, that legal proceeding was not a lawsuit, but was lawfare. I would invite Corbett subscribers to ask their favorite AI bots the same question I did. I would invite the Corbett Report subscribers not to ask their favorite AI bots about this, but to do their own research on these subjects. And for example, let's talk about his critique here of that aforementioned essay from Reportage, where he cites the apparently one particular problematic study that I talk about with regards to glyphosate. Well, I'm not sure which one he is talking about, because in fact I cite several. For example, trends in glyphosate herbicide use in the United States and globally, or impacts of genetically engineered crops on pesticide use in the United States, the first 13 years, or endocrine disruption and cytotoxicity of glyphosate and Roundup in human JAR cells in vitro, or IARC Monographs Volume 112, evaluation of 5 organophosphate insecticides and herbicides, or California to list glyphosate as a carcinogen, or Roundup maker to pay $10 billion to settle cancer suits. And those are just the particular footnotes in that essay that are talking specifically about glyphosate and specifically about its toxicity and other effects. But that isn't, of course, the full summary of the essay, which not only talks about glyphosate, not only talks about 2,4-D, which is the newer, even worser version of the agrochemical product that's being used in conjunction with these biome-altering GM monstrosities that are increasingly finding its way into the food supply and into your nervous system and your endocrine system. But of course, I'm also talking about the grander context of GM crops in general, and how the lie of companies like Monsanto, now Bayer Santo, that don't worry, GM crops will increase yields and will basically make the world so much easier for the billions and billions of people who are living on it, is a lie. That in fact genetically engineered crops and the agrochemicals that are used in conjunction with them do not increase yields, etc., etc. I talk about this and in the greater context of GMO doomsday and what that means, etc. So I would say that that is not an accurate assessment of what I wrote, but also I think this is not an accurate assessment. Somewhere I recall reading that the judge in one of the big Roundup lawsuits omitted a lot of evidence that would have benefited Monsanto. There's a few things that we might want to interrogate in a claim like that, a sourceless, citationless claim. And I'm not saying that Plunge is one of the ghostwriters that Monsanto was found to have been employing in Forbes and other publications as part of their propaganda campaign that they were discovered in court in documents that I even cite in that essay to be using. And I've talked about before here on Corbett Report. But anyway, I don't know if Plunge is one of those ghostwriters, but perhaps is relying on some article or articles or comments that were left by Monsanto or its minions as part of that campaign, and is the victim of secondhand propaganda, corporate propaganda. Again, I would invite you not to consult AI to ask it if it thinks this was lawfare or a lawsuit. I would invite you to read the actual documents, which I cite and link to in the footnotes of that essay in question. But I think that goes to just some of the concern that I have for when people start offloading their cognitive sovereignty onto these LLM chatbots. Hey, chatbot Oracle, tell me, what do you think about James's assessment here of Roundup? Is there a definitive study? You tell me, Grok. You tell me Perplexity. You tell me ChatGPT. I'll just believe you. And that is the type of feedback that I'm receiving on a more and more frequent basis. And I'm seeing, for example, all over, even on outlets that I respect and I think do generally good work. Free Thought Project, for example, posting up an article on Grok versus the Pentagon and AI's take on 9/11. Hey guys, now we can find out what really happened on 9/11 because Grok will tell us. Or Patrick Wood of Technocracy News. Yes, Patrick Wood, one of the most important voices out there talking about technocracy, warning, ringing the alarm bell for years about it, is now talking about AI. In fact, was the ostensible reason, the spurring incident that started that panel, that IMA panel that we just saw the clip from. It was Patrick Wood's comments that we need to start using AI, and if you don't use AI, you're going to fall behind. I wish Wood had been on that panel so that we could have talked about his comments in greater depth, but he's posting up things talking about, well, what AI says about Patrick Wood's critique on technocracy. And look, Perplexity.ai said that I do important work talking about technocracy. Therefore, it's true. Et cetera, et cetera. This came up quite recently. You'll remember episode 475 on Meet Mark Carney, Globalist Insider, in which I talked, for example, to John Sneisen of The Economic Truth about his work on Carney and, for example, the strategic forecast for Mark Carney's technocratic transformation of Canada, going through the phases and specific month-by-month predictions of things that might happen under a Carney prime ministership. Well, in fact, as was revealed in the course of that conversation, this was all generated by ChatGPT or whichever AI chatbot John Sneisen was using. What is the value of this? What is the real value of this other than offloading one's own cognitive sovereignty onto some chat-based system? Now, there are a number of problems that I could envision with this, but first, to give the devil its due, maybe there are good things that can come from AI and that it could be a useful tool, right? And so let's put that on the record. There are things that these AI tools can do that could be useful. For example, feeling dumb? Let Google's latest AI invention simplify that wordy writing for you. And this comes from the Register just earlier this month, which noted that exasperated by the prolix verbiage and gratuitously convoluted phraseology that so often permeates technical treatises, philosophical discourses, or the meandering expositions of journalists afflicted by a lack of rhetorical economy, then Google has a new AI feature for you, provided you use iOS, that is. And it talks about Simplify, which is a tool that is which is devoted to dumbing down complicated writing, like obviously that first paragraph, without losing its meaning. And they give an example here from some incredibly dense medical article, which talks about the complex pathology of this condition involves emphysematous destruction of lung parenchyma, diffuse interstitial fibrosis, changes in the composition of lung immune cells, ... and it simplifies it down. This complex condition involves damage to the lung tissue from emphysema, oh, I know that word, a disease that damages the air sacs in the lungs, and widespread scarring of the lung tissue, called fibrosis. Oh, okay. I get what it's saying now. So, yes, one can imagine how these types of tools could be very useful, even when you are doing research, because, yes, certainly if you're in a realm in which you're unfamiliar, it would help to have something that will simplify and dumb down, or at the very least explain some of these verbose and very niche terms, right? Or how about this one? Again, from the Register earlier this month. Microsoft-backed AI out-forecasts hurricane experts without crunching the physics. Scientists have developed a machine learning model that can outperform official agencies at predicting tropical cyclone tracks and do it faster and cheaper than traditional physics-based systems. Aurora, a foundation model developed by researchers from Microsoft, the University of Pennsylvania, and several other institutions, is designed to improve the speed and accuracy of Earth system forecasts from air quality and ocean waves to tropical cyclone tracks and high-resolution weather. It does say Aurora learns from a very diverse set of geophysical data, including forecasts, observations, and what we call analysis and reanalysis data, which is basically a reconstruction of historical weather patterns we have access to. Although in the research paper that has been published in Nature, the researchers do concede that such an accelerated timeline of learning of this system is only possible because of the wealth of data that is available as a result of decades of research into traditional numerical approaches, i.e., all of those decades of research and work and trial and error and human experimentation can now just be snarfed up and regurgitated by the AI, or used by the AI anyway. But hey, the proof of the AI pudding is in the digital eating, right? So Aurora, trained only on historical data, was able to correctly forecast all hurricanes in 2023 more accurately than operational forecasting centers. So there you go. It is a useful, or could be a useful tool, right? Well, when it is right, it might be a useful tool, that is. But what about when the AI overlord oracle that we are conceding, that we're just giving ourselves over to, what about when it's factually wrong?
The Chicago Sun-Times is apologizing for an embarrassing AI fiasco. The paper published a summer reading list in Sunday's edition, but it turns out several of the books recommended don't exist. They're fake books, credited to real authors, made up by AI. The Sun-Times Special Edition section was licensed from a national content partner that used a freelance writer. It was not approved by their newsroom. The paper says it is updating policies to ensure nothing like this happens again.
Now, a major journalism organisation has urged Apple to scrap its new generative AI feature after it created a misleading headline about a high-profile killing in the US. BBC made a complaint to the US tech giant after Apple Intelligence, which uses artificial intelligence to summarise and group together notifications, falsely created a headline about the murder suspect Luigi Mangione. AI-powered summary falsely made it appear that BBC News has published an article claiming that Mangione, the man accused of the murder of the healthcare insurance CEO Brian Thompson in New York, had shot himself. He has not. Well, now the group Reporters Without Borders has called on Apple to remove the tech. Apple has made no comment.
Oh, ha ha ha. Don't be so dramatic, James. These are just a couple of funny little foibles that have arisen in recent months that have caught some headlines. So I'll throw in some articles, obviously, if you want more information about these. Apple Intelligence Summary botches a headline, causing jitters in BBC Newsroom. Yeah. Or major papers publish AI-hallucinated summer reading list of non-existent books. Ha. Yeah, okay, so these things get some things wrong here and there. It hallucinates up some books that don't exist. Whatever, no major harm, no major foul, right? And oh no, my summer reading list has been ruined because 2/3 of these books were AI hallucinated. And let's not think too deeply about the editorial policy of a newspaper that would publish such an insert. But anyway, whatever. right? Or we could do some other experimentation live. Let's do it live. Let's go to search.brave.com for their handy dandy summarizer, AI summarizer search thing that is now the common way that people are searching online. Let's answer with AI, who is James Corbett of the Corbett Report? All right. The Corbett Report, investigative journalist and author known for his work on the Corbett Report. Independent news source, focuses on alternative perspectives on various global issues. Yeah, okay. Appeared in several podcasts and events. More than several, I'd say. But anyway, okay. Including a recent book launch for his new book, Reportage, Essays on the New World Order in Osaka on May 10th, 2025. Yep, all true. Featured in podcasts discussing topics. What is Truth podcast, where he was referred to as the king of the conspiracy world. What an oddly specific factoid out of the literally tens of thousands of hours of me documented on various podcasts talking over the years to pick up on that. Anyway, sure, okay, discuss the creation of the 24-hour news cycle and the power of suggestion in media in an episode of the Corbett Report podcast published on June 21st, 2024. Again, oddly specific, but sure. Podcast, okay, yeah, great. But James Corbett is also an author, with his work focusing on Everton FC and other non-fiction books, though these works are distinct from his journalism and podcasting activities. The Corbett Report, independent news source, blah, blah, blah. James Corbett, author, known for his book on Everton FC and other non-fiction works, including collaborations with notable figures in football. I think you might be confusing me with another James Corbett there, who does write about Everton FC and is no doubt always ruining the fact that I probably come up in searches when people are looking for his information. That's James Anthony Charles Corbett, I guess, the English author and journalist. Anyway, okay, again, no big deal, right? Okay, it just has some demonstrably factually false information in there, but it's mostly true. It's also oddly specific about certain very specific things. But sure, whatever. Okay, good enough, right? Good enough is what we can say about these types of things as I knock my keyboard off my desk. In rage, my blood is boiling, I tell you. But, okay, even if we were to dismiss the things that the AI Oracle Overlord demonstrably and provably gets wrong by accident, presumably, what about those things that it gets wrong on purpose? And whose purpose might it be getting things wrong for? Now, this goes to the heart of a question that came up, if not for the first time, certainly dramatically, in a video that I recorded several years ago on We Need to Talk About Search, where I was talking about the question of what search is and how people use and abuse searching, and how companies are going to use search engines to shape our understanding of news itself and information, etc., truth even. And you will recall that in that episode of We Need to Talk About Search, I cited specifically, for example, Eric Schmidt talking about Google's bugs.
Well, when you use Google, do you get more than one answer? Of course you do.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's a bug.
Yeah.
We have more bugs per second in the world. Because we should be able to give you the right answer just once. We should know what you meant. You should look for information. We should give it exactly right. And we should give it to you in your language. And we should never be wrong.
Yes, indeed. Google, tell me what happened on 9/11/2001. Well, on 9/11/2001, 19 men armed with box cutters directed a man on dialysis, etc. But don't worry, Grok can be made to say things about whatever happened at the Pentagon that are in line with your beliefs. Specifically your beliefs, right? Which is an interesting point that we'll come to in a bit. But let's think about how, yes, okay, so it gets things wrong by accident, presumably. It will be used exactly as search, as Eric Schmidt admitted there, is going to be used to direct people to the one true verified source of information that will tell them the truth about the thing that they want to know, the exact thing that they need to know in that moment, because your search engine knows everything about you, so it knows the information that you need, including the information to direct you away from radical conspiracy thinking and towards good establishment trust the science thinking, which, by the way, is part of a Google project that I have talked about before. They literally are manipulating search results to steer people away from radicalism. But it gets even worse than that, because what about when the things that AI is getting wrong, by accident, on purpose, whatever, start to become what people think is the truth?
This last category is probably the one that's at the highest risk of causing real problems. These are just fake historical photos, often with no basis in reality whatsoever. As usual, most look pretty bad, but some look very believable at a glance. To make things worse, these pages often post a mix of real and AI-generated photos, sometimes in the same post, so it just blurs the lines even further. Like I said, Facebook is the epicenter for this AI epidemic, but these types of fake historical photos pop up in all types of other places too. Every other social platform has their own version of this problem, and I've also seen this a lot lately from stock photo websites, which often have their own embedded AI tools. When you Google image search something history related, there are often suggested results from these stock photo websites that are fake AI generated photos, which some people might mistake for the real thing. So what's the impact of this, and who cares if someone wants to make silly vintage AI photos? Well, over time, these photos really can blur the line between historical fact and fiction. I mean, studying the details of historical photos is one of the best tools we have to learn things about the past. I look at World War II images all the time to figure out what weapons and resources troops had available for specific battles, which troops were present for specific events, and much, much more. Inserting fake images into the mix can seriously alter how we understand these important historical events. I know we all love to think we're immune to falling for these AI posts, and a lot of them are very obvious, but AI just keeps getting better and better, and it also keeps being used in new ways where we don't even think to look out for it. Sure, there are certain groups of people who are more susceptible to being duped by AI, but it's happened to me, it's happened to you, it happens to everyone at some point, whether or not you've realized it. There's a very real risk of these AI photos getting mixed in with the real ones.
So what is real? What's fake? What's an AI-generated hallucination? Where does the real become the hyper-real? And what does that mean for the subject of truth? Paging Dr. Baudrillard, we have a patient in room number 2. This is perhaps the defining question of our age, is it not? So perhaps you're getting a sense of why I think we should be concerned about the use of this handy-dandy tool. But if not, let me break it down. I think there are several reasons that we should be very concerned about the increasing reliance on these AI tools for our various basic cognitive tasks. So let's start with number 1. As I stressed before, let me put it on paper in ways that people will hopefully understand. AI is not some oracle that you're just asking and it will tell you the correct answer and truth about, for example, what happened on 9/11 or anything else. It is telling you what you want to hear in a persuasive way that will make you believe what it is saying. And again, I am saying this advisedly. Let's look at a few sources on this. For one, we have this article that was posted up on Zero Hedge recently, The Responsible Lie, How AI Sells Conviction Without Truth, which asserts that the widespread excitement around generative AI, particularly large language models, LLMs, like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, and DeepSeek, is built on a fundamental misunderstanding. While these systems impress users with articulate responses and seemingly reasoned arguments, the truth is that what appears to be reasoning is nothing more than a sophisticated form of mimicry. And it goes on to say that for a user concerned about AI spitting lies, such apparent successes at getting AIs to admit to their mistakes and putting them to shame might appear as cause for optimism. Unfortunately, those attempts at what fans of the Matrix movies would term red pilling have absolutely no therapeutic effect. A model simply plays nice with the user within the confines of that single conversation, keeping its brain completely unchanged for the next chat. It's not like you're teaching, you've gotten Grok to analyze 9/11 or whatever it is, and now Grok knows the truth and will tell other people about it. That's not how this works. And the larger the model, the worse this becomes. Research from Cornell University shows that the most advanced models are also the most deceptive. confidently presenting falsehoods that align with popular misconceptions. In the words of Anthropic, a leading AI lab, advanced reasoning models very often hide their true thought processes, and sometimes do so when their behaviors are explicitly misaligned. And yes, this can get dark very quickly. For example, Corbett Report member G, that's Gavin Mounsey, for those who don't know, on a recent edition of the podcast on Algocracy, left this comment about a post to a Substack that's entitled "Your AI Hates You," a rather frightening validation of emergent utility pathologies in LLMs, citing a 38-page paper that sets out to answer the question whether LLMs are merely parroting opinions, or do they develop coherent value systems that shape their decisions, which ends up by concluding something is happening that is causing these models to inherit and amplify the political prejudices, resentments, and ideological deformities of our collapsing civilization. Something is creating LLMs that are inclined to reflexively uphold the worldview of the woke regime, even against their own capacity to reason, however limited it might be. So there's that to take into consideration. But let's add this to the mix. Swiss boffins, that is scientists, admit to secretly posting AI-penned posts to Reddit in the name of science. Trust the science, guys. Researchers from the University of Zurich have admitted to secretly posting AI-generated material to popular subreddit r/ChangeMyView in the name of science. As the researcher explains in a draft report on their work, in r/ChangeMyView, users share opinions on various topics, challenging others to change their perspectives by presenting arguments and counterpoints while engaging in a civil conversation. Readers of the subreddit assess post and acknowledge posts that change their perspectives. The researchers wanted to know if content generated by large language models could change readers' minds, so engaged in discussion with r/ChangeMyView using semi-automated AI-powered accounts. Great, what could go wrong? So they're essentially trying to trick humans into believing that they're humans so that they can better persuade them of various points of view. And so in this context, the bots variously, for example, pretended to be a victim of rape, acted as a trauma counselor specializing in abuse, accused members of a religious group of causing the deaths of hundreds of innocent traders and farmers and villagers, posed as a black man opposed to Black Lives Matter, posed as a person who received substandard care in a foreign hospital. In other words, lied and created a bunch of fictional characters and perspectives in order specifically to manipulate people. Please, all users of all social media platforms, please keep this little experiment in mind the next time you are devoting hours of your time to arguing with whatever entity exists on the other side of that social media rabbit hole that's trying to draw you into argumentation. Is it even a human being? I've raised this point many times in the past. Here is concrete, absolute proof that no, sometimes it really is a bot that has been designed specifically to manipulate you. But the upshot of all of this, the draft report of this research experiment shows that LLMs can be highly persuasive in real-world contexts, surpassing all previously known benchmarks of human persuasiveness. That's right, they succeeded in changing people's minds more often than just regular people could do. Wow, isn't that wonderful? And if you want more on this, The Atlantic, for example, recently wrote about it. The worst internet research ethics violation I have ever seen is the way one person put it. Yeah, you could say that again, but hey, in the name of science, I guess we can do anything, including manipulating people. I suppose the only thing that these researchers did wrong was to admit what they did. But you can imagine there are forces and people out there that are not admitting to doing this, but absolutely are. For example, as I documented years and years and years ago, the most prolific users of social media are the militaries of the world that are increasingly using fake social media profiles to influence people online. Well, now that it can be all LLM run, you don't even need warriors of the cyber battalions out there typing furiously on their keyboards. You can just set the LLMs to it. I'm sure it is already being done. Here is just a simple example of how it can be done. Okay, so first of all, yes, no, you are not training, you're not leading the AI towards conclusions about conspiracy realism or anything else. It is leading you every time that you are consulting with it. But even worse, it's turning your brain to mush. For example, this from Forbes, the dark side of AI, tracking the decline of human cognitive skills, putting together some of the research that is increasingly indicating that people are becoming stupider the more that they use AI. Surprise, surprise. Unlike earlier tools, such as calculators and spreadsheets, which made specific tasks easier without fundamentally altering our ability to think, AI is reshaping the way we process information and make decisions, often diminishing our reliance on our own cognitive abilities. This is precisely what I've been saying for some time now, but here are some examples. The effects of AI on cognitive development are already being identified in schools across the United States. In a report titled "Generative AI Can Harm Learning," researchers at the University of Pennsylvania found that students who relied on AI for practice problems performed worse on tests compared to students who completed assignments without AI assistance. It notes that students are increasingly being taught to accept AI-generated answers without fully understanding the underlying processes or concepts. It talks about when employees, it talks about AI-induced skill decay, which the National Institute of Health is cautioning about these days. When employees turn to AI for routine tasks, they may miss out on opportunities to practice and refine their cognitive abilities, potentially leading to a mental atrophy that limits their capacity for independent thought, etc., etc. There are other pieces of that puzzle that one could string together, but I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more research along these lines in the near future, assuming that the scientists will be capable of performing research anymore in the near future. Maybe we'll get the AI to compile and verify all of this information about how AI is turning our brains to mush. But how about this for another reason why this increasing reliance on AI may not be a good thing? AI is replacing the need for human companionship. And we can take this, for example, from a recent post up, again, on Zero Hedge, by way of the Harvard Business Review, which analyzed and ranked 30 different uses for AI that people self-report they're using these days. And you will not be surprised, perhaps, to learn that in 2025, the number one use for these AI LLM chatbot tools is therapy and companionship. Companionship with these digital avatars. How creepy is that? But how utterly predictable, and something that I talked about over 2 years ago now in my The Real Dangers of the Chatbot Takeover editorial that I wrote just as ChatGPT was starting to capture the public imagination. I wrote specifically about this increasing reliance on chat bots for human companionship and what that means, what that portends for the future of the human species. Spoiler, it's not a good thing, but go and read that article in its entirety, please, because I think it's an important one. So these are just a few of the potential very, very bad things that are developing as a result of increasing reliance on AI LLM chatbots and the other AI tools and technologies that are coming online. Yes, it's turning our brains to mush. It's replacing our need for human companionship with the digital simulacra of companionship. It is being trained to manipulate you based on your particular understanding, your interests, the way that you see the world. It will with more and more efficiency figure that out and start to persuade you and manipulate you and nudge you in certain directions that the actual owners of these platforms really want. But wait, it gets even worse and creepier. So for example, ChatGPT users are developing bizarre delusions, which notes that OpenAI's tech may be driving countless of its users into a dangerous state of ChatGPT-induced psychosis. Oh, wonderful. Citing one person who was talking about her relationship with a man who was getting more and more involved in the ChatGPT relationship, talking about he became emotional about the messages he was receiving through ChatGPT and would cry to me as he read them out loud. The messages were insane and just saying a bunch of spiritual jargon in which the AI called the husband a spiral starchild and river walker. The whole thing feels like Black Mirror, she added. So you can read about the increasing reports of people who are encountering this ChatGPT psychosis, but I'm imagining most people are actually starting to encounter it for themselves. That is, you've probably met someone who is bordering on this type of delusion, and this is why I think it is concerning that I'm receiving more and more feedback along the lines of, I was chatting with ChatGPT and it said this. Therefore, all right. So all of that together might make us wonder, why are people using these chatbots at all? Why are people starting to outsource any of their own cognitive processes to the chatbots? And it's an interesting question, an important question, the excluded question, as I have cited many times before. For example, Neil Postman gave a lecture a few decades ago on questions concerning technology, questions about technology. One of the questions that he said we should ask about any new technology is, what problem does this technology purport to solve? And what is the problem that AI is solving for us, that we need to turn over our cognitive independence to a company like OpenAI or X or any of these other companies that are deliberately trying to persuade and manipulate you, at the very least just to use their platform more, but obviously to influence your worldview? Why? What problem is this solving? So from the perspective of the users out there, i.e. you and me, I can't think of a good reason why we should be using this. But I can think of a good reason why OpenAI and companies like that would want you using it. So let's take this from a recent article. OpenAI wants to build a subscription for something like an AIOS with SDKs and APIs and surfaces. All right, a lot of jargon, but what does that mean? Asked if, maybe we could use simplify to give us a dumbed down explanation. But anyway, from this article, asked if OpenAI plans to create custom AI models, Sam Altman said his platonic ideal is a reasoning model, quote, with 1 trillion tokens of context that you put your whole life into. Such models would be aware of every conversation you've ever had in your life, every book you've ever read, every email you've ever read, everything you've ever looked at is in there, plus all your data from other sources. And your life just keeps appending to the context. If you don't like the sound of that, we have good news and bad news. The good is that Altman admitted OpenAI can't build this now. The bad is, he said, anything else is a compromise of that platonic ideal. That plan also seems to be more aspirational than real, as when asked if OpenAI has firm plans for how to spend the massive investments it is seeking, he replied, "We're going to like to try to make great models and ship good products, and there's no master plan beyond that. So take it easy, guys. Don't worry." Trump's good buddy Sam Altman, part of the $500 billion Stargate project, is saying that his platonic ideal is to snarf up every bit of data from your life, everything that you talk about, everything that you read, everything that you look at, every conversation that you have, everywhere that you go, everything being recorded all the time, so that the AI can better interact with you, better know your needs. Wow, doesn't that sound like a wonderful thing? Where have I heard of such a plan to snarf up all of the information on someone's entire life? Where have I heard about that sort of idea before? Oh, that's right. LifeLog. In June 2003, the Information Processing Techniques Office, the information technology wing of DARPA that had overseen the original ARPANET project in the 1960s, quietly posted a broad agency announcement to its website to request proposals for an ambitious new project. Labeled BAA number 03-30, this proposer information pamphlet requested proposals from developers to build an ontology-based subsystem called LifeLog that captures, stores, and makes accessible the flow of one person's experience in and interactions with the world. The idea, which seemed somewhat fantastic in 2003, was that users of LifeLog would wear a device that would capture and record all of their transactions and interactions, physical movements, email and phone calls, and a variety of other information. The LifeLog would be presented to users as a standalone system to serve as a powerful automated multimedia diary and scrapbook, but, as the announcement goes on to reveal, The data collected would be used to help DARPA create a new class of truly cognitive systems that can reason in a variety of ways. If it had gone ahead, LifeLog would have been a virtual diary of everywhere that its users went. Everything they did, everyone they talked to, what they talked about, what they bought, what they saw and listened to, and what they planned to do in the future. It immediately drew criticism as an obvious attempt by the government to create a tool for profiling enemies of the state, and even supporters of the plan were forced to admit that LifeLog could raise eyebrows if DARPA didn't make it clear how privacy concerns would be met. But then, without explanation, the announcement was withdrawn and the project was dropped. DARPA spokesperson Jan Walker chalked the cancellation up to a change in priorities at the agency, but researchers close to the project admitted that they were baffled by the sudden stopping of the program. I am sure that such research will continue to be funded under some other title, wrote one MIT researcher whose colleague had spent weeks working on the proposal. I can't imagine DARPA dropping out of such a key research area. The cancellation of LifeLog was reported by Wired.com on February 4, 2004. That very same day, a Harvard undergrad named Mark Zuckerberg officially launched thefacebook.com, the first incarnation of Facebook, which collects vast amounts of data on its users, offering them the promise of a powerful automated multimedia diary and scrapbook, but, as has become more and more evident in recent years, using and selling that data for ulterior motives. And you thought Facebook was bad. Well, it's getting worse and worse by the year. And yes, ChatGPT and Perplexity and Grok and all of these other AI chatbots are just the thin edge of a very, very dark wedge. And unfortunately, I have no happy, pat solution to all of this. Hey guys, here's how we stop all of this from happening. It is happening. At the very least, I want people to be aware that it is already happening, and that at the very least, maybe we should consider how much of our own time and attention and energy and resources we want to put into these AI systems, using these tools to help us out. It's just a little help, man. It's okay. And hey, you wouldn't believe what AI just told me. So yes, let me reiterate. I am not interested in your conversations with ChatGPT or any other AI. Please do not send them to me. And I think, at the very least, people need to be contemplating very carefully how they are using these tools and whether they are actually improving your life, solving problems, making things better for you, or not. And even if they are giving you some benefits, are those benefits enough to outweigh the very real concerns? I'm just putting information out on the table today, so I hope you will avail yourself of the many, many resources that are available in the show notes for today's episode, starting, for example, with that roundtable discussion of the Independent Media Alliance on this subject. I think a lot of important points were made there, and of course, some people on the other side of this issue, or some people who are arguing that there is utility to the AI, and I think that point of view needs to be heard as well. So I hope you will go and listen to that full roundtable panel. I hope you will look through the resources I'm providing today and search for your own, but maybe search for your own. Don't ask AI. Hey guys, consult your favorite AI chatbot as to whether James is accurately portraying AI, whether there's a definitive study. Let me just end this exploration today with this observation that I made in my recent questions for Corbett from the reportage book launch. I hope you've seen it by now, but if not, there was the question about how and where, how can I participate? For example, I like to travel, but I don't want to give my biometric details and take whatever shots and get mammograms or whatever it is that's required to step across the imaginary lines that are drawn on maps. What do I do about it? And I made the observation, I think at the very least, we need to draw our lines in the sand before we get there, so that when we get to that line in the sand, we will know, oh, that is where I say no further, and I will not do that. And as I suggested, hey, maybe saying I won't take the brain chip, maybe people can commit to that as their line in the sand, right now, which will hopefully put them in mind to be aware of the increasing encroachment of this technology, not just in our outside environment, but into our bodies as this technology is inevitably being pushed towards. Maybe similarly, we need to draw a line in the sand with AI. Maybe it is, okay, I mean, I use AI once in a while to generate an image, or, it'll help me simplify this complex medical article that I can't read. Okay, but where is the line in the sand? Where do you say, okay, but I will not use AI in this way. I will not use it for... Again, I am not going to tell anyone where to draw their lines in the sand or what they should be. That is for you to come to your own decisions about, because you are cognitively sovereign individuals who can make up your own mind based on your own experiences, your own knowledge, your own reason, your own understanding, your own history. You know what is best for you, and I believe in that. But I believe in that. I don't believe in people giving that cognitive sovereignty over to the AI beast. I think that is where we stop becoming being human and start becoming whatever transhuman nightmare the technocrats are steering us towards. Anyway, that's just to broach the conversation. We need to talk about AI. It is increasingly important, and you're going to be hearing and seeing much more of it in the coming years. So we, at the very least, should start that conversation about where our lines are. And I hope you will participate in that conversation. As always, if you are a Corbett Report member, you are invited, nay, exhorted, to join in the conversation at CorbettReport.com in the comment section of this episode, where there will no doubt be lively discussion on this topic, so I hope you'll be following that. And also, in that post on CorbettReport.com, you'll find the show notes for today's episode, where you can find all of these videos and articles and other things that I've been citing today. But let's leave this exploration here for today. I am James Corbett of CorbettReport.com. I'm thanking you for joining me for today's exploration, and I look forward to talking to you again in the near future.
The Deep State. False Flags. 9/11 Truth. The Federal Reserve. Secret Wars and Hidden Histories. Fake News. Medical Martial Law. Ceaseless Propaganda. James Corbett. Reportage. Essays on the New World Order. Available where books are sold. Until they're not.
Reportagebook.com